Thank you. So, well, first of all, we couldn't be happier that that the National Academy has taken this on as a cause for a study. This is a central issue for us. Well, thank you. A central issue for us, and I believe that this group can do what we can't do. So we can do a lot, but I think you can do what we can't do. So I also couldn't be happier with the membership of the committee. I think you couldn't have picked a better group to address this problem. It's such a wide range of experience and knowledge here. That's exactly what we need, I think, for this purpose. So thank the Academy and thank you individually. I'm not going to give you an awful lot of background about impaired driving. I hope to have a discussion with you. I just wanted to make a few points, and I just have a couple of slides, just to give you sort of a perspective of why we came to you on this issue. And see if I can, there we go. So I'm sure this is not news to you, and I am sure that you all understand and appreciate the scale of the alcohol driving problem, or you wouldn't be here today. But I just want to make a couple of points. One is the significance of the problem. Second one is our lack of progress. Hello, Dr. Hinkson. Third, I want to talk just briefly about some of the major barriers or opportunities, depending how you look at them, and why we think you can help with them. And then I just want to end again with you know, why we think you can do what we can't do here. So so let me just start by pointing out the obvious here, that alcohol impaired driving is a very serious and persistent problem. It currently claims about 10,000 lives per year. It's about a third of our fatalities. We can talk about causation, but that's another discussion. But I think those statements are fair to make. It's a problem that that we once made significant progress on. If you look at that period between the early 80s and the mid 90s, we reduced the number of alcohol-impaired driving deaths by about half, and we reduced the proportion of all traffic fatalities from about 50% down to about 30% during that period. So, since then, as is obvious, we've not made substantial progress. So, naturally, we've spent a lot of time thinking about, well, what happened during that period that we can't repeat? And here I just want to point out there have been many studies on this, and Dr. Hinkson, who just joined us, is perhaps the one who I would look to for my advice in this area. But here is one study that we did 10 years ago, looking specifically at that period. What happened during that period that we can't seem to repeat? So this was a regression analysis we did of a range of factors, and looking at this period to see what factors were associated with the change in alcohol-impaired driving fatalities. And it was quite interesting. It was enlightening for us at the time, and the answer that we, the finding from the study was that the change that we made was about half attributable to demographics, which is interesting. The demographic effect was, the aging through of our generation, we caused a lot of trouble when we were between 21 and 34 years old, and when we got to 35, a lot of things improved. And among them was the alcohol problem, and so a lot of the effect of that period that we'd like to recreate was happenstance for us, really. It was the aging through of a population bulge. There is another one, by the way. Our kids, Generation X, will also be aging through in the next decade. But whereas we were a wave, they're a ripple. I hope that makes a difference for us, but it's not going to be like when we age through. So the other part, which is more replicable potentially, was laws. The other factor which had a strong association with the change in alcohol-related fatalities was the accumulation of state laws during this period. So you have to remember that 1980 was the year that Mothers Against Drunk Driving was formed, and they became focused on enacting state legislation. That was sort of their main mission, and they were very good at that. And during that decade or 15 years, and I contributed, I think, almost entirely to them, but they were responsible for over 200 laws. Over 200 laws got enacted during this period. I think Dr. Hingston's going to talk to you after lunch about legislation, and I'm sure he's going to point out that these laws have both a specific and a general deterrent effect, and they are specifically good at apprehending people who don't comply with social expectations and getting them off the road. They are generally good at communicating to everyone else what those social expectations are. And that creates a very widespread deterrence. And the combination of the specific and the general yielded a big change during this period of time. So, can we repeat that? Well, that's something I'd like you to consider. That's not impossible to repeat, but it would be difficult to repeat. We're up against some barriers with regard to further legislation. Any kind of road safety legislation, as you know, involves compromise, some concession of individual freedom, or in some cases, economic potential. This week, current event, this week, state of Utah took a bold step in introducing a bill for .05 BAC. That's very bold. I noticed in the newspaper account that the opposition in the legislature cited economic impact, that this might be bad for tourism. And so this is the kind of resistance. I mean, that's just one little window on the kind of resistance that we're up against with legislation. It's not easy. During this period, there was some momentum. We don't have that momentum now. During this period, we were getting more than 10 per year, more than 10 new drunk driving laws per year. We don't get that now. Now we get 1, 2, 3. So that's where we are, and it's sort of a glimpse of some of the barriers. So let me talk a little bit more about what we see as sort of barriers or opportunities, depending on how optimistic you are, Ed. So from our perspective, we would very much appreciate the committee looking at sort of 2 levels of concern. And one is, I would characterize as technical. It's new tools. We certainly need new, strong tools to address the impaired driving problem. We've we've benefited from innovation in this area before. Dr. DeGutis was involved in a behavioral intervention, screening and brief intervention that was quite effective and quite clever at new tool introduced a decade or so ago. There are new technologies, including the driver alcohol detection system for safety, the DADS program, which also have great potential on sort of a population scale to make big difference. So we have a need for these new tools and techniques at one level. At a larger level, though, we have a need for social capacity. We can have all these tools in the world, but if we can't implement them, they don't do us much good. So our ability to implement tools like these depends on public will. As I mentioned, almost every one of these tools involves some concession. They're not absolutely free to implement. They cost, they have some social cost in individual freedom or in potential economic activity or something. So our ability to implement our tools, legislation, enforcement, even education, depends on the public will to accommodate them. There seems to be individual, at least some level of individual concern about drunk driving. This week, the National Safety Council, you may have seen some news, the National Safety Council announced their projections for fatalities for the year, which is grim. But they also released a new survey of drivers across the country in which they asked drivers to rank various safety concerns, driving concerns. And drunk driving was right at the top. 78% of the respondents indicated that they thought that drunk driving was a substantial safety risk. That's good. And so it was above many other things, including driver distraction, speeding, and so forth. That's good. There seems to be individual concern. What there seems to be less of is inclusion of this issue among non-driving issues. That is, getting the issue of drunk driving on the national agenda, on that finite list of things that gets discussed in the media and debated by professionals and acted on by policymakers. We were once there. I think during that decade, drunk driving was very much discussed. I mean, that's how 200 laws got passed. It's not so much discussed anymore. It's been displaced by a range of non-driving things, all of which you're very familiar. Even within driving, it's been displaced by sort of fresher issues like driver distraction. More recently, the threat of marijuana use. These are serious concerns, but from a very objective level, probably less serious than alcohol. They're sort of fresher and they have a sort of a novelty effect, but meanwhile, we have a giant of a problem in the room with us, and a problem that is comparatively well understood, established, and documented. So that is sort of how we would like to see you engaged, both at the technical level and at this larger social level, if I could characterize it that way. And if I can just sort of bring this back to my opening comments, so why did we come to you? So I think you can do what we can't do on both levels. On the technical level, we need innovation, and the innovation often comes from making connections from other fields, other domains, and seeing opportunities. We may have played ourselves out from within the field, but your collective experience and knowledge brings like a whole new dimension to this. So I think your collective wisdom can identify some innovative new tools for us. That's terrific. That'll be very helpful. Again, that's one part of what we hope that you'll help us with. The other part is this, probably bigger, probably more important part of helping lift the issue from where it is to where it needs to be, getting it back onto the agenda so that it is being discussed, being debated, being considered by policymakers, and being acted on. It's not there right now. There's limits. We're very sort of familiar with our limits in getting it there. It's very hard for us to move our own issue up to that level. That seems to require a much broader platform. It needs to be sort of lifted from a broader base, and I think you guys provide the the credibility and the platform that can lift the issue to where it needs to be. So that's I'm at the end of my remarks. So I'm happy to use the rest of my time for discussion. I think you had some specific questions that we could talk about, or I know you've been meeting a little bit and maybe you have other questions, so please.
Great.